want to start with a story, as I often do. It's a haunting tale. The little match girl sent out every day by her father had to sell matches on the street. The family needed the income from those matches in their hovel of a home. If she did not return with all the matches sold and the money for her family, she would be beaten. It was cold. It was a cold, cold day before Christmas, and the little match girl bundled up as best she could against the wind and the snow and went out into the street and said, "Matches for sale, matches for sale." Her weak and tired voice over the wind. It was so cold. No one seemed to be buying matches that day, as if they'd all blow out if they bought them. Try as she might, she had not sold a single box. Hungry and exhausted, she found shelter from the snow and the wind in a doorway. She couldn't go back home without selling at least some of the matches. So she tried again. Matches for sale, matches for sale. But no one stopped. The rich hurried home to their warm houses at this dark time of the year. The little match girl, so cold, so hungry, looked into the window of the house that she was standing in the doorway of. There were lights in the windows, and inside people were warm, and they had a great feast spread on the table. And around the table were people well-dressed and warm, and they were laughing, and there was a girl her age in the room. Oh, she longed to be in there. She ached to be in that room. The wind blew again, but the light in the window didn't flicker because no wind was coming through into that room. She stepped from the window and finding shelter in the doorway again, realizing how cold she was. At this point, she knew she couldn't go home, so she lit one of the packs of the matches, the box, to stay warm. It glowed against the fading sun, warm in her hands. It felt so good, the warmth. The little match girl lit another pack, and this time she closed her eyes and she imagined what it would be like to be inside that room with the warmth of a fire. It felt so wonderful. When that pack burned, she opened her eyes and suddenly remembered where she was, and the cold returned to her. So she closed her eyes again and lit another pack. And now she imagined she was once again in the house with the light in the window, eating now all the good food, the turkey with stuffing and the potatoes dripping with butter. Peeling back an orange, she felt the sweet spray across her face. The pack of matches died again. But this time she didn't feel so cold. In fact, she couldn't feel anything but her fingers holding the burned out pack and the glow on her face. She had only one box left. So she closed her eyes and she lit it, and she was transported into the room itself. She was the little girl. She was warm and fed, and they knew who she was, and they called her by name. She was home. She felt home, and she stared out the window beyond the candle into the snow beyond. It was so good to be home. They found the little match girl's body the next morning. All the matches had burned and lay in a pile by her feet in that doorway. She had a smile on her face. She had found her way home. Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Little Match Girl, is perhaps the most troubling story of the Christmas season, and oddly not told often. Some have seen this in theological terms as a justification for the better life in the hereafter. Others, of course, take a more nuanced Marxist approach. This is awful. How could this happen? Why did this happen? A bitter testimony to the tragedy of the poverty that so many live in. I believe there's something of a middle ground between these two tellings of that story, these two meanings, that there's something about the light in the window itself that speaks to the possibilities of what it means to be human. John Tarrant, in his beautiful little book of poetry, The Light Inside the Dark, writes that everything new needs to be born within a container. The container that holds us is ultimately our own character. Our own character is what holds us against the winds of misfortune. The little match girl dreamed of her character as brave and is transformed into a different world in spite of the cruel reality of the story. Now, of course, if we look at our world, we are not in Victorian England. We're in a different kind of world. But people still freeze on the street, and there are many who go hungry. Our light depends not just on what we're able to do, but how we see our place in the world as giving light. Giving light not just to helping people directly, but to bearing witness to what is actually wrong. Bearing witness. The Buddha said that we need to stay awake. In fact, that's what the name Buddha means. It means awakened one. He said, be witness to your thoughts. You are what observes, not what you observe. You are what observes, not what you observe. In the fable, the little match girl became what she observed, but what about that other side of the window? What about the family in there and the light that they've lit in that window? This, friends, is the season of bearing witness. As much as we bear gifts, gifts are a form of witness, as in the story by O. Henry, the couple bearing what they gave most up for the other thing that the other couple wanted. But of course, there's the gifts of the Magi, the magicians, not three wise men from the East. Probably a woman in there, pretty sure there was. And they bring gifts to the young Prince of Peace, to Jesus. That's the story, in adoration, but also understanding that this symbol of a prince born among us, a Prince of Peace, could be the symbol that we live our life with. Bernie Glassman. Bernie Glassman has died now, but Bernie Glassman was once a great Buddhist teacher. He did many wonderful things. He had a program in New York City where people would actually be homeless for a few months and then go back to their regular jobs. And with that, there was a great deal of transformation that happened with many social programs in New York City back in the late 90s and into the early aughts. At one point, he took 150 participants, religious people from around the world, to Auschwitz. He took them there so they could not only witness the tragedy of the Holocaust, but also understand the power of bearing witness. And they went there and they sat on the railroad tracks that led into the camps. There's a complex of camps there. And they read the thousands of names of people who had been killed. It took them days, because the Germans, the Nazis, were very good at keeping records. Later he wrote, when we bear witness to the unfolding of daily life, we not only add to it, but the strength that comes from it gets us new strength into our own lives. We are open to what is, and in that process, a healing arises. Friends, now more than ever, we are here to bear witness to the world in which we live, not from a place of desperation and sadness, but from a place of possibility. As Yvette said, from the hope that we create in the spaces that we have. Many times I've gone to community meetings, city council meetings, invited by other communities to sometimes speak in favor of a particular cause, but often I'll just go on my own and I'll just sit out there. And the reason that I would do that is because I know that those city council members see me. In a room of black and brown faces, there's this old white guy sitting there, dressed in a suit. What's up with him? I'm there to bear witness. I'm there to say, I am watching you. And in so doing, I am hoping you will do the right thing. And sometimes they do. We need our light now more than ever here in the sanctuary to draw people in who don't have a place to go. And I'm not doing this work alone. We're not doing this work alone. My interfaith colleagues are working really hard right now to put in place safety programs for queer people and for people who face possible deportation. We may be called upon at the last minute to go and stand in witness to someone who's being deported by the authorities, state-sanctioned injustice. And we may be called to stand there and bear witness. The bounty of our lives provides us with this special opportunity, no matter where we are in our social location, to really change the world. Because here's the news, friends. You are a very generous people. Did you know that? Have I told you that recently? I don't get to announce the offering very often, but if I would say, we are a generous people, because you are a generous people. I've seen it over and over again. The purpose of our time, the purpose of the very character of this time of year, is to reconcile the two sides of the window, the cold on the outside and the warmth on the inside. As my colleague Richard Gilbert said, to savor the world and save it. The little match girl, of course, transcended the suffering at the very real cost of her life. She showed her character to be brave and desperate, spiritual yet tragic. For me, the larger question has always to do with what are we going to be able to do about it? And maybe it is just bearing witness to what is wrong in the world. And that, friends, may be enough to start. We do not have to solve the world's problems. We can't. But we can make the world in which we live better. And we're already doing that. And that's the good news. We are committed to organizations and programs that are actually helping people. Not just the work we do with Family Promise and giving housing and food to those who are unhoused, but actually working with the problems of homelessness in our community through the statewide initiatives that we're a part of. You're already doing it. So I want you to celebrate that, and I want you to savor that, because this is really the work and the strength we need to get. It's not about, I need to do more, I need to do more. It's about, what am I doing? And then how can I use that to help others see what needs to be done? I am always heartened by lights in windows. I don't know about you, been around, driving around, I see lights in windows. Now, we don't usually light candles, except in my house, because Francis is a big candle lover and very safe, by the way, all good, no worries, very safe. But when I do see a light in a window, it brings back a sense of warmth. And there are all kinds of lights. There's Advent lights, there's menorahs, there's lights that have burned out bulbs, which I think is symbolic of something, right? Light is a form of bearing witness. When we light something, we are bearing witness to the world. We're saying it's okay. There's light here. Wherever you see it, friends, turn it on. Why, when we go to concerts now or go to events, does everybody take out their cell phone and turn on their light and hold it up in the air? Have you seen that? That's fabulous. 1,000 points of light. That's what we're doing here now. We are creating a sanctuary of light so people find their way here, but then we go back out and we bear witness and do what we can in whatever way we can, and that is good. That is good. One reason for this season, and there are many, although the most important reason for the season I saw the other day in a cartoon in a scientific journal, it said the tilting of the sun is the reason for the season, but the tilting of the earth, technically, true. Sophia Fahs, the great Unitarian educator of the 1900s, said, Every child born is one more redeemer. I love hearing kids in the sanctuary, by the way. Thank you. Love it. It's a sign that life goes on. I don't know what kind of world they're going to face, but I know we have to do all we can to make their world a better one. I'm always reminded, and I'll close with this brief story, of the little boy who met his baby brother. I personally believe that we all come from a divinity. I don't know what the divinity is in full, but a form of light itself, and I believe we return to that divinity when we pass on. That this brief span of times, this dash between our dates, is so powerful. But we are still going back to something that is even greater. That's my personal theology. So this little story that I heard years ago, apocryphal though it may be, brings me great hope and great joy. The little boy and the baby brother comes home, and the 4-year-old is just so excited about a baby brother. You perhaps have seen this. Not always, but sometimes you've seen this. And they put the baby in the crib, and the boy says, can I be with him alone for a minute? And Mom and Dad are like, okay. But you know, they got all the technology, right? They got the intercom, now there's cameras. Well, they can see what's going on. Mom and Dad are in the other room. And the little boy walks over to the crib and just stares at his baby brother, very quiet. And then he says softly, "Tell me what it's like again. I've almost forgotten." In all my years, I have marveled most at how true children are to our calling home, how true they are to the light that burns within them, longing to be made something new. They are coming out into the world. We will do well, friends, to light a candle tonight and to remember that we are the hope we've been waiting for. So may it be, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 226, People